live televised debate, Democrat Abigail Spanberger and Republican Winsome Earle-Sears take center stage to win your vote as Virginia's first female governor. From your local election headquarters.
Yeah, we ain't talking left or right tonight. We talking light, the kind that cuts through pride. Two leaders stepping up, same stage, same fight. The real test, who walks the word right?
Two voices on one mic, spotlight on the floor. One holds a tongue, one swings like war. Abigail waiting a turn, calming the storm. Winsome fires words like the pulpit's warm. One quotes the process, one quotes the creed. Both quote the founders, both plant seeds. But which soil's deep and which seed grows? Only time and fruit gonna show who knows.
Blessed are the meek, the ones who think before they speak. Blessed are the pure in heart, there's power now weak. Love your enemies even when they tweet and freak. Cause the loudest drum don't mean the spirit's unique. Two sides, one mouth, tell me who gon' listen. Two hearts, one fight, tell me who's missing.
One says let voters decide, let the people choose, but dodge the limit line, that's political news. One says keep the law we got, protect the life at stake. Toxic topic, danger, real lives on the take. Neither one screamed murder, neither one preached hate. Both walk that razor edge the culture makes. But Christ said let your yes be yes, no spin, no yes. So the faithful keep watch,
cause clarity's a test. Oh, be quick to hear, slow to speak, that's the plan. Cause a soft word breaks bones harder than a man. Anger's a spark, keep it far from the flame. Cause every idle word got heaven calling your name. Oh,
one sound Pharisee, law in her tone. God in a gate like truth's on loan. The other Sadducee, system and state. Practical peace, but the edge is a. One burns hot with conviction and sword. The other cool like a dip.
At Norfolk State University. So on the car tax, we could have gotten rid of that this year because Governor Youngkin put it in his budget that we could get rid of it, but unfortunately the Democrats decided against that, and so my opponent, she says she's going to get rid of it too, but she's going to have to ask her side of the aisle how to do that. So we had the money, we can do it, but really what I want to ask, this first question is, Abigail, when are you going to take Jay Jones and say to him, you must leave the race? He has said that he wants to murder his political opponent, and not only that, but his political opponent's children, 2 and 5 years old.
Ms. Earle-Sears, we're going to get to that question in a moment, but first we're talking about the car tax.
I'd like her to answer the question.
We're talking about the car tax right now.
Well, that was still my time.
Yes, but I want to get an answer from you. How would you come up with just over $3 billion a year for the car tax? I'll give you 15 seconds to clarify.
Yes. So as I said, we have the money. We have run budget surpluses every year that we've been in office. Over $10 billion, $9 billion of which we've given back to the Virginia taxpayer. That's serious money, and the taxpayers want that. And when I am governor, I'm going to have a form that says, check here if you want to pay more in taxes. But my opponent needs to answer about Jay Jones.
Your time's up, Ms. Earle-Sears. Ms. Spanberger, you've said that you'd like to get rid of the car tax. Will you make a commitment here tonight that you will make that a priority, and where do you intend to find the money for local governments every year if that tax is eliminated? You have 60 seconds.
The car tax is the most hated tax in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and in fact, that has been the case for many, many years. My husband, Adam, who is here this evening, actually wrote a paper in high school about the hated car tax. And year after year, many people make promises about getting rid of the car tax, but without a plan to do it. Unfortunately, my opponent, when in the legislature, had the opportunity to lower the car tax by 10% and voted against it. Now, in the 4 years that she has been the lieutenant governor, she hasn't made the effort or endeavored to get rid of this tax. And
Your
in fact,
side said
I
no.
will
Ms.
work
Earle-Sears,
with anyone,
please.
to Democrats, Republicans, local and state officials to finally get rid of this most dreaded tax. In fact, it requires significant planning and cooperation. But I have a history of getting rid of hated taxes during my time in Congress. I repealed with bipartisan support a unfair tax on firefighters, police, and public servants. I have gotten rid of a hated tax in the past by building a coalition, and I will do it again.
So, Ms. Spanberger, how would you come up with just over $3 billion to fund that car tax for local governments?
It requires bringing people together, Democrats and Republicans, to put any and all possible paths forward on the table. You are correct that we need to ensure that the loss of the car tax doesn't mean loss of funding to our public schools and to our first responders.
Let her clarify.
And so in working together, we will work to not only repeal this tax, which of course also requires a constitutional amendment, but ensure our communities are funded.
Ms. Spanberger, your time is up.
It doesn't require a constitutional amendment.
We're going to move on to the next
just
topic.
a decision.
Deanna?
Put Gilbert in the crew with the two worst people you know, and he receives both bullets every time. Colleague. Jay, please stop. Jones. LOL, okay. I mean, do I think Todd and Jennifer are evil and that they're breeding little fascists? Yes. Colleague. You were talking about hoping Jennifer Gilbert's children would die. Jones. Yes, I've told you this before. Only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy.
Jay Jones has apologized and says he takes full responsibility for those messages. Ms. Spanberger, you have called the comments disgusting and said you condemn violence. The question for you tonight is, were you aware of these messages before they were released publicly, and will you continue to endorse Jay Jones as the next Attorney General of Virginia? You have 60 seconds.
The comments that Jay Jones made are absolutely abhorrent. I denounced them when I learned of them, and I will denounce them every opportunity I get. As a mother, as a public servant, as a candidate for governor, I denounce them. And it is important that candidates always denounce violence on no matter which side of the aisle. Violence, violent rhetoric, we should always be focused and forceful in our denouncement of it. And importantly, my opponent unfortunately only denounces violence when her side is the target. I hope
like that,
into
Abigail.
the future she will endeavor to denounce violent rhetoric and violence no matter who the victim. And tonight, Lieutenant Governor, we should always be focused and forceful in our denouncement of it. And importantly, my opponent unfortunately only denounces violence when her side is the target. I hope
like that,
into the
Abigail.
future she will endeavor to denounce violent rhetoric and violence no matter who the victim. And tonight, Lieutenant Governor Earle-Sears, I will say you routinely refer to me as your enemy.
Please
You
give her a chance to
routinely
respond.
refer to me as your enemy. I'm not your enemy. You are not my enemy. We are political opponents, and tonight voters are here to listen to the policy differences that we have. So as we move forward, we must continue to set a good example for all of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger. I didn't hear an answer there on the endorsement issue, so I want to just make sure. Will you continue to endorse Jay Jones to be the next Attorney General of Virginia? And were you aware of these text messages before they released? You have 30 seconds.
In fact, it appears that it was those who released the text messages and held them for years. So the public was unaware who had knowledge of these text messages for many years. I learned of these text messages the day that they came out, and I denounced them as soon as I learned of them.
She denounces murder.
And importantly, at this point, as we move forward, the voters now have this information that was withheld for them, presumably for political reasons. opinions, but the voters now have the information, and it is up to voters to make an individual choice based on this information.
Ms. Spanberger, I understand what you're saying about the voters, but for you yourself, do you still continue to endorse J. Jones? 15 seconds, yes or no?
We are all running our individual races. I believe my opponent has said that about her lieutenant governor nominee.
Ms. Earle-Sears,
and it's up to every person to make their own decision. I am running my race to serve Virginia, and that is what I intend to do.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger. We just want to clarify, what you're saying is that as of now, you still endorse J. Jones as Attorney General.
I'm saying as of now, it's up to every voter to make their own individual decision. I am running for governor. I am accountable for the words that I say, for the acts that I take, for the policies that I have put out.
Thank you.
I am responsible for the policies I put out and the work I will endeavor to do tirelessly for the people of Virginia.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger. Ms. Earle-Sears, before we get to rebuttals, because we will get to rebuttals, we have a question for you. While there is no equivalency, this next example does speak to the divided nature of our country. During the Charlie Kirk Memorial, President Trump said, quote, "I hate my opponent and I don't want the best for them." Is there a place for that kind of political speech? You have 60 seconds.
Well, I think as everybody knows, I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian before I'm a Republican, and I'm required to forgive people. And it's hard sometimes when somebody has abused you, etc., but it's something you must do, because not to forgive is almost like, as someone said, you drink poison thinking that it's going to affect the other person. And I want to live a decent life, and I don't want to not have peace in my life. And so as I've said before, I would not say that. So that's why I'm wondering why my opponent won't say, beyond it's abhorrent and disgusting, why she won't say it is not okay and that he must leave the race, because J. Jones advocated the murder, Abigail, the murder of a man, a former speaker, as well as his children who were 2 and 5 years old. You have little girls. What would it take him pulling the trigger? Is that what would do it? And then you would say he needs to get out of the race? Abigail, you have nothing to say? Abigail, what if he said it about your 3 children? Is that when you would say he should get out of the race, Abigail? You're running to be governor.
Ms. Earle-Sears, I know you're saying that you would not personally say this, but do you think still that there is that place for that kind of rhetoric, the example that we gave, even coming from others? You have 30 seconds.
So I'm responsible for my behavior, and what I've just said, I wouldn't say that. I would not speak that way. Look, I'm from a third world country. I was born in Jamaica, and when I was 10 years old, I saw that kind of political violence, which is why I'm asking my opponent to please ask him to get out of the race. Have some political courage. What you have done is you are taking political calculations about your future as governor. Well, as governor, you have to make hard choices, and that means telling J. Jones to leave the race. I have seen what it means when people are shot in the streets and thrown in the back of cars just for political purposes. I don't want to see that in America. America must never be that place, and Abigail needs to say something.
Ms. Earle-Sears, you're out of time there. We do have one more follow-up question for you before we get to rebuttals. One more question for you. This is on the topic of endorsements. President Trump has endorsed the Republican incumbent Attorney General. Do you need Trump's endorsement to win the race in Virginia? You have 30 seconds.
So I will take all endorsements, including the president, and I am working very hard for the people of Virginia. I believe in lower taxes. The people want that. My opponent, unfortunately, she's already said she's going to raise taxes. She's going to raise energy rates. Well, she's already voted that way because, well, that's all she wants is solar and wind. Well, if you look outside, the sun isn't shining and the breeze isn't blowing. And then what, Abigail? What will you do? What will you do? You're smirking. And you know that the people of the Southwest have a lot of energy issues.
Ms. Earle-Sears, we need to get to rebuttals. So, Ms. Spanberger, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I think in her response to the question that you asked, my opponent proved my point, which is when violent rhetoric comes from her side of the aisle, she refuses to denounce it. The statement that you read from President Donald Trump was violent rhetoric that she refuses to denounce, and this is why I say you are not
Earle-Sears,
my enemy.
She has her 30
and
seconds.
I wish you would
yours.
stop using language like that. But I am also glad that she began speaking about issues of affordability, because as we are talking about issues of affordability, I am the only candidate on stage who's put forth a plan to actually lower costs for Virginians.
Ms. Earle-Sears, now your turn for a rebuttal.
Yes.
You have 30 seconds.
So what Abigail has just said is a lie, that she's the only one who has affordability. Please go to SpanbergerLies.com and check that out. I don't understand why you just can't come forward and say he needs to go. I mean, we're talking about murder. We're talking about someone's life being taken from them. Have you nothing to say about that? Are you not going to address it? Really, you can't go any further. You're a governor. You're supposed to stand up for all the people. Are you saying political murder is all right?
Ms. Spanberger, I want to give you a chance to respond since yes.
Once
you
again,
have 30 seconds.
I have denounced political violence, political rhetoric, no matter who is leading the charge. When given the opportunity, Lieutenant Governor Earle-Sears, you have not done the same.
No matter who is leading the charge on what.
And so when it is important that all of us set a better example.
And so
importantly,
no matter who
fountain,
is
providing the comments that are
advocating but it's difficult for us to hear.
She has no courage. You cannot be governor. No courage.
The audience can't hear when you're talking over each other, so we just want to make sure that we limit that so people can hear.
She has no courage.
We're going to the next topic now.
Yes, we are moving on to the next topic with Tom on federal workers.
Thank you, Deanna. It's been more than a week since federal lawmakers allowed the government to shut down with more than 150,000 government workers. Virginia is facing the brunt of the impact. So, Ms. Earle-Sears, knowing its impact on Virginia, if you were governor now, would you ask the president to use his power to work with Democrats to reopen the government? You have 60 seconds.
So my opponent all summer long has been playing political football with federal workers by trying to say that she loves them more than anyone else. Well, let me tell you what love looks like. It looks like Abigail calling Senators Kaine and Warner and telling them, go back, do your job, and vote against the government shutdown. We only need eight Democratic senators. That's all we need. And we cannot find 8. And yet, we can find 2 in Virginia. When are you going to publicly say to Senators Kaine and Warner, go and do your job and keep federal workers working? That's the way you stop the shutdown, because right now they're having to work, and especially our military, without any pay. I'm a United States Marine veteran, and it is definitely hard, especially in the enlisted ranks, to work without pay. You can do something about that. You're the one who's been talking about all that love. Well, show love, keep them in their jobs.
Ms. Earle-Sears, the question, though, that I'm looking for, the answer to is, would you ask the president, if you were governor, to use his power to work with Democrats to reopen the government? 15 seconds to clarify.
So the president has already said that he would do that. But, you know, before anything gets to the president, it's in the Senate right now. The House Republicans have voted, and it's in the Senate. And all we need for it to get to the president so the shutdown stops is 8 Senate Democrats. That's just it. 8 Senate Democrats, and we cannot find any because they're playing political football, as you have been, Abigail.
She refuses to denounce, and this is why I say
you
are not
Earle-Sears,
my enemy.
She has her 30
and
seconds.
I wish you would stop using language like that. But I am also glad that she began speaking about issues of affordability, because as we are talking about issues of affordability, I am the only candidate on stage who's put forth a plan to actually lower costs for Virginians.
Ms. Earle-Sears, now your turn for a rebuttal.
Yes.
You have 30 seconds.
So what Abigail has just said is a lie, that she's the only one who has affordability. Please go to SpanbergerLies.com and check that out. I don't understand why you just can't come forward and say he needs to go. I mean, we're talking about murder. We're talking about someone's life being taken from them. Have you nothing to say about that? Are you not going to address it? Really, you can't go any further. You're a governor. You're supposed to stand up for all the people. Are you saying political murder is all right?
Ms. Spanberger, I want to give you a chance to respond.
I have a rebuttal to that?
Yes.
Once
You have
again,
30 seconds.
I have denounced political violence, political rhetoric, no matter who is leading the charge. When given the opportunity, Lieutenant Governor Earle-Sears, you have not done the same.
No matter who is leading the
and
charge
so
on
when
what?
it is important that all
When
of us set
someone
a better
shows a
example.
sign that
Mr. Earle-Sears,
And
it's
so
difficult for us to
importantly,
hear if
no
you're
matter
both
water
who
fountain
is
it took you
Ms.
a whole
providing
day to
the
say
comments
Mr.
something,
Earle-Sears,
Abigail.
we
are
need to move on,
advocating
but it's
for
difficult for
political-
us to hear
She has
if
no
you're both
courage.
talking.
You
But it's-
cannot be governor.
The
No
audience
courage.
can't hear.
The audience can't hear when you're talking over each other, so we just want to make sure
Excuse
that we
me, I
limit
was
that
not
so
talking
people
over
can
her.
hear.
She has no courage.
We're
Okay.
going to the next topic
Yes,
now.
we are moving on to the next topic with Tom on federal workers.
Thank you, Deanna. It's been more than a week since federal lawmakers allowed the government to shut down with more than 150,000 government workers. Virginia is facing the brunt of the impact. So, Ms. Earle-Sears, knowing its impact on Virginia, if you were governor now, would you ask the president to use his power to work with Democrats to reopen the government? You have 60 seconds.
So my opponent all summer long has been playing political football with federal workers by trying to say that she loves them more than anyone else. Well, let me tell you what love looks like. It looks like Abigail calling Senators Kaine and Warner and telling them, go back, do your job, and vote against the government shutdown. We only need eight Democratic senators. That's all we need. And we cannot find 8. And yet, we can find 2 in Virginia. When are you going to publicly say to Senators Kaine and Warner, go and do your job and keep federal workers working? That's the way you stop the shutdown, because right now they're having to work, and especially our military, without any pay. I'm a United States Marine veteran, and it is definitely hard, especially in the enlisted ranks, to work without pay. You can do something about that. You're the one who's been talking about all that love. Well, show love,
Ms.
keep
Earle-Sears,
them in their jobs.
Ms. Earle-Sears, the question, though, that I'm looking for, the answer to is, would you ask the president, if you were governor, to use his power to work with Democrats to reopen the government? 15 seconds to clarify.
So the president has already said that he would do that. But you know, before anything gets to the president, it's in the Senate right now. The House Republicans have voted, and it's in the Senate. And all we need for it to get to the president so the shutdown stops is 8 Senate Democrats. That's just it. 8 Senate Democrats, and we cannot find any because they're playing political football, as you have been, Abigail, all this time. Love is a verb, it's a show me, it's a doing. Love is not a shutdown. When are you going to ask Senators Kaine and Warner to please keep federal workers working?
All right, we're going to go to Ms. Spanberger next on this one. Knowing the shutdown's impact on Virginia, if you were governor now, would you urge the 2 Democratic senators to vote to reopen the government until a deal can be worked out with Republicans? You have 60 seconds.
Well, importantly, when I was in Congress, when I entered Congress, I entered during the longest government shutdown in history. And 2 weeks into my time in Congress, I went to the White House. I sat down in the Situation Room with a group of Democrats and Republicans and President Trump, urging him to come to the table, urging him to make a deal. That is how we started the path towards ending the government shutdown, with leadership from the president. The current lieutenant governor of Virginia has not stood up for Virginia workers, because right now, at this moment, when Virginia's federal workforce and contractors and communities across the Commonwealth are suffering because of this government shutdown, it is only increasing the challenge that they are facing after months and months of the attacks from this White House under DOGE. The entirety of that time, my opponent has made light of federal workers losing their jobs, saying
I'd like a
it's
rebuttal,
not
please.
a big deal.
So just to
and that
clarify,
everyone loses their jobs.
Ms. Spanberger, time is up, but just to clarify then, you would not urge the two Democratic senators to work with Republicans to reopen the government?
To clarify, I would encourage everyone, our Democratic senators, our Democratic House members, our Republican House members, to work
This is her
together
first time
and
doing that.
drive
Ms.
an
Earle-Sears,
effort
please. Thank you.
to
Continue.
come back to the table. Everyone from Virginia, the most impacted state in a time of shutdown, as our communities are suffering after months of DOGE and attacks on our federal
Your time's up,
workforce.
Ms. Spanberger.
Everyone in Virginia should be coming together and urging the
time's
president
up,
Are you
Ms.
going to let her
Spanberger.
continue and continue?
We are going to move on to the next topic, which is data centers, and my colleague
Am I
Deanna.
not going to get a rebuttal? She's attacked me. Am I not going to get a rebuttal?
I'll give you 15 seconds.
Thank you very much. So you've heard a lot of words from my opponent, and she's talked about DOGE, and you know, I'm the one who started a men's prison ministry. Of course I care about people. It was one of the best things I did. We've created over 265,000 jobs. I know what it's like to lose a job. How could I make light of it? But my opponent has cut and spliced my words so that it will
Time
look
is up.
like I did not
Ms.
care.
Earle-Sears, time is up. Next topic, data centers with my colleague Deanna.
Thanks, Tom. So data centers are expanding across Virginia, increasing power demand and expected to raise energy bills even more for all Virginians. Ms. Spanberger, what is your plan to make sure data centers have the power they need and Virginians don't get stuck with the bill? You have 60 seconds.
Absolutely. So data centers are coming to Virginia, and many localities want to welcome them. And it's important that they pay their fair share. And as governor, I will ensure that data centers pay their fair share. But we have a challenge looking towards the future as it relates to our energy generation here in the Commonwealth. We are the largest net importer of energy in the country. And that requires real leadership in contending
That's
with what
because
is
you
an
support cutting
Ms.
energy.
Earle-Sears,
impending
you will have a chance.
an impending energy crisis. And unfortunately, as we see an impending energy crisis, my opponent has supported efforts from the Trump administration to take millions and millions of dollars of energy investments away from Virginia. This is all the while that energy costs continue to rise for Virginians. That is why in my affordability plan, I laid out plans to reduce the cost of energy here in the Commonwealth.
Were you aware of these messages before they were released publicly? And will you continue to endorse Jay Jones as the next Attorney General of Virginia? You have 60 seconds.
The comments that Jay Jones made are absolutely abhorrent. I denounced them when I learned of them, and I will denounce them every opportunity I get. As a mother, as a public servant, as a candidate for governor, I denounce them. And it is important that candidates always denounce violence on no matter which side of the aisle. Violence, violent rhetoric, we should always be focused and forceful in our denouncement
Question is, are
of
you
it.
going to tell him
And
to get his
importantly,
Earle-Sears,
please
my
give her an
opponent,
opportunity.
unfortunately, only denounces violence when her side is the target.
Don't
I
lie
hope
like that,
into the
Abigail.
future she will endeavor to denounce violent rhetoric and violence no matter who the victim. And tonight, Lieutenant Governor
Are you just
Earle-Sears,
denouncing
I
it,
will
or are
say
you going- he-
you routinely refer to me
Ms.
as
Earle-Sears,
your
Ms.
enemy.
Earle-Sears, just please
You
give her a chance to
routinely
respond.
refer to me as your enemy. I'm not your enemy. You are not my enemy. We are political opponents, and tonight voters are here to listen to
today
the
you're
policy
saying that,
differences
but you
Ms.
said
that we
Earle-Sears.
fuel
have.
your
Ms.
rage.
Earle-Sears,
So as
please
we
give her a
move
chance.
forward, we
will both
must
have chance to
continue
respond.
to set a good example for all of our children.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger. I didn't hear an answer there on the endorsement issue, so I want to just make sure. Will you
for the Lake
Ms.
and Riley
Earle-Sears?
Act, which simply said if you're criminally illegally
time is
here,
up.
murderers, rapists,
Ms. Earle-Sears, your time is
pedophiles
up.
have to go back home.
We're going to move on to the next topic, education, with my colleague Deanna.
Thank you, Tom. Now on the topic of education, educating children in the Commonwealth is a top issue for Virginia voters in this election, as it was 4 years ago. Ms. Earle-Sears, you have stated you want parents more involved in their children's education. Would you include parents in designing school curriculum, or should that be left up to the educators? You have 60 seconds.
Yes, so I absolutely believe that parents ought to be involved in their child's education. You know, I am my child's first teacher, and I don't co-parent with the government. And so that's why I strongly support parents being involved in education. But you know who doesn't? My opponent, Abigail Spanberger. She had the opportunity to vote for the Parents' Rights Act, but she didn't. It simply said this: if the curriculum is being changed, then I need to know as a parent. Abigail, why did you vote against parents on that? And it also said, if my child is not on grade level, reading, writing, arithmetic, all of that by the 3rd grade, then I as parent needs to know. Abigail voted against the parents knowing where their child was by the time they were on grade level. Why would you do that? Why are you voting against parents? Why are you not voting for them? Then she voted against the parents knowing whether there was violence in the schools. Abigail, this is a simple question. Why did you vote for that? Why would you vote for parents not knowing if violence is being committed?
Ms. Earle-Sears, I have a follow-up question for you.
Ma'am.
I'm specifically asking not just about general involvement in education, but about designing the school curriculum more specifically. So is that something you believe parents should be involved in, or do you believe that educators should be taking the lead and it should be left up to them? You have 30 seconds.
As I said, parents, we are their parents all day, twice on Sundays. We are their parents. We must be involved. How will we know what is happening in the schools? How will we know if our children are being educated? You know, when Ralph Northam, the Democrat governor, voted to shut down government, he shut down our schools, and as a result, there was a learning loss. And my opponent, Abigail Spanberger, when we wanted to reopen the schools, the governor immediately said upon inauguration, the schools must be open. Abigail said, no, they must be out for a whole semester. She took all that money from the teachers union, and that's what they wanted, and that's what she voted for.
Ms. Earle-Sears, you're out of time. Ms. Spanberger, should the governor and state agencies decide which books are in school classrooms, or should parents have a voice in that decision? You have 60 seconds.
I'm a mother of 3 daughters in Virginia public schools, and just this week I have spent time at my daughter's school for a school event, and I have emailed with another one of my daughter's teachers about her ongoing work. So she should be advised that I've had some of that communication. But it is important that parents are involved every step of the way, as I have been.
Then
in
why
fact,
did you vote against
with
the
my
Rights Act?
with my 9th
please.
grade daughter, who is actually here with us in the audience, it's because of communication from her teacher that I purchased the books that she'll be studying. Parent engagement is extraordinarily important, and I support the strength of our public schools because public schools across Virginia provide
But your vote
opportunity.
was not
They
that.
provide opportunity
Ms.
to
Earle-Sears.
students everywhere. And unlike my opponent, I do not support
You
defunding
on your
public
vote,
Ms.
schools.
Earle-Sears.
I do not support taking public dollars out of public schools, as my opponent has advocated
you
for the
say,
entirety.
but not
Ms.
what you
Earle-Sears,
do.
Ms. Earle-Sears, we're not going to be able to get to as many topics if we keep having to give Ms.
Yeah,
Spanberger
but
time
she
as you're
continues
interrupting
to
her.
lie. I think I'm up to lie 12.
But Ms.
My
Ms.
opponent is-
Earle-Sears, you
Abigail.
will have chance.
To answer your question, Lieutenant Governor, it was federal government overreach and
moving
an
on to the next
unfunded
topic.
mandate.
yeah, here
That
we
is
go.
what I told my
Candidates.
Here we
Republican
go.
colleagues
We're
at the
moving on
time.
to
If
the
you
next
want to be
topic now.
federal, you should have stayed in
Ms.
Congress.
Earle-Sears,
Oh, I said it was
it's
federal
time to
overreach,
move on to
ma'am.
the
If
next
you
topic.
wanted to be federal, you should have
Moving
stayed
on to
in
the next
Congress.
topic now, please. We're going to go to Ms. Spanberger here on the topic of marijuana. You have stated your support legalizing a retail market for recreational marijuana that prioritizes public safety. What public safety concerns do you have? You have 30 seconds.
It's important that there be transparency in what is available on the market. As a former federal agent who worked narcotics cases, as a CIA officer who tracked transnational criminal organizations, as the only person on stage who's had bills signed into
Which is
law
why you
by
should
President
have
Trump
voted
related to
for the
stopping
Lake
the
and
flow
Riley
of
Act.
fentanyl
We can't hear
into
whenever
our
you're talking over each
country.
other. Please continue.
As the only person on stage who's had a bill signed into law by President Trump restricting fentanyl flowing into our country and tightening our border security and
follow
as the
your
only
vote.
person on stage
didn't
with
follow
the
your vote.
endorsement
Ms.
of the
Earle-Sears.
Police
What in the world?
Benevolent Association, it is extraordinarily important that we have transparency and that there is a clear market in order to be enforced, because it is in the absence of an open and clear and extraordinarily transparent market that law enforcement is not able
Don't even
to
know what you're saying.
Ms. Spanberger, your time is up. Now we'll go to Ms. Earle-Sears on this issue. The governor has twice vetoed bipartisan efforts to legalize a retail market for recreational cannabis. Would you sign a bill legalizing the commercial sale of any cannabis products in Virginia? You have 30 seconds.
I believe in medicinal marijuana. I believe it has value. But you know, I had a business, and when I had my business and my employees came up positive for marijuana, they couldn't work for me. They couldn't drive my trucks. They couldn't go in and repair anything. We were working on gas. We're working on electric. We can't afford to have people who are working and they don't know what they're doing. They'll blow everything up. Now, my opponent, I don't understand. You know, she says one thing and then she does another, or she does one thing and says another.
Your time is up,
we can't
Ms.
figure
Sears.
her out.
Ms. Earle-Sears, your time is up.
Who are you, Abigail?
Ms. Earle-Sears,
Ms.
we are
Earle-Sears,
moving on
we're
to
moving
talk
on.
about the current administration, and I'm going to be starting with you for this topic. A central theme of your campaign is let's keep a good thing going, referring to Governor Youngkin's time in office. Is there anything that you would do differently? You have 30 seconds.
So the governor and I have had many talks, as you can imagine. My opponent's only plan is solar and wind. Well, what happens when the sun goes down? There is nothing.
Ms. Earle-Sears, we do need to move on to the next question.
All right, thank you, Deanna. We have a question tonight from a Norfolk State University student. Let's listen.
Young people are leaving Virginia for more affordable housing and better job opportunities. What initiatives or policies would you implement to make Virginia a more attractive place for young professionals to live, work, and build their future?
Ms. Earle-Sears, we'll start with you. How do you respond to the students' economic concerns?
Yes, so what we have done in Virginia, and what we're continuing to do, is we're bringing jobs here because we want our children who are born here, raised here, we want them to stay here, and we want them to do very well because we want them to create generational wealth, and a good education will do that. But when the education happens, they also need the jobs. And I don't know if you've been seeing, but we have created over 15,000 new business startups. Never existed until we came into office. New business, high-paying startups. And then we have created, as I've said before, over 265,000 jobs, and we have another 225,000 job openings right now. And you know, I was just with the governor, Governor Youngkin, out in Charlottesville, where Afton Scientific announced 200 more jobs.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Spanberger, what economic policies or initiatives would you implement to make Virginia an attractive place for young professionals to live, work, and build their futures? You have 60 seconds.
Importantly, I want to thank the students of Norfolk State for welcoming us to this campus, to the faculty and the administration. Thank you for hosting this incredible event here. And the young woman raised an incredibly important point, which is we attract people to our universities from across the country, and we should want, and I do, and as governor, I will want to ensure that when they graduate, they will stay in Virginia to start a business, to start a family, and to start their career. The challenges, though, that she mentioned are housing costs and affordability issues. In fact, during the time that the lieutenant governor has been in office, the cost of buying a house has gone up 18%. The cost of renting a house has gone up 14%, with just 11% increase even just this last year, the third highest in the whole country. And my opponent so frequently talks about job creation. Virginia has had 7 months this year of rising unemployment. The challenges are real, and Virginians need someone who will put Virginia first.
Unemployment numbers are.
Okay, we had a very spirited debate thus far. Excuse me, Ms. Sears. We've had a very spirited debate thus far, and now we're going to shift gears, and my colleague Deanna will take it from here.
Yes, we want to see where maybe there's some shared common ground. Ms. Spanberger, what quality or qualities of your opponent do you admire? You have 30 seconds.
I admire her faith that she puts into action through her time at the prison ministry that she frequently talks about, and I admire her service to our country, particularly as someone who chose to be an American and chose to serve. I think those are admirable traits, and frankly, what makes our country and our Commonwealth a special place, that people the world over come to our country to become Americans, to serve in the military and in elected office.
Thank you, Ms. Spanberger. A handshake. Well, Ms. Earle-Sears, with that, what quality or qualities of your opponent do you admire? You have 30 seconds.
Yes, from what I've seen, I believe that she is a devoted mom. I truly believe that. And that she is a daughter who loves her parents very much. And I do believe that she cares.
Thank you, Ms. Earle-Sears. Well, we have many more topics up for debate tonight, including transgender issues and reproductive rights. We will be back after this quick break.
The recent Virginia gubernatorial debate held on October 9, 2025, at Norfolk State University offered a stark contrast in political styles and governing philosophies. There was no decisive knockout blow, nor any candidate collapse. Instead, the event presented a clean split screen for Virginia voters. Winsome Earle-Sears approached the debate like a prosecuting firebrand, while Abigail Spanberger responded with the demeanor of a steady technocrat. Republicans largely left convinced Earle-Sears had landed significant blows, particularly regarding the J. Jones scandal. Democrats, conversely, felt Spanberger maintained her composure and effectively articulated her plans. Independents, as is often the case in our current political climate, were left with clear contrasts but little definitive closure. The debate highlighted two distinct leadership styles, each presented as a strategic choice for the Commonwealth's future. Earle-Sears adopted an aggressive posture from the outset, characterized by frequent interruptions and direct addresses. She consistently pivoted back to the J. Jones issue, energizing her base, but often irking skeptics. Moderators intervened repeatedly to manage the flow, a dynamic that appeared intentional on Earle-Sears' part to control the narrative. Spanberger, in contrast, maintained a composed and forward-facing presence, addressing the camera, moderators, and policy points with restraint. Her supporters interpreted this as a sign of steady leadership. Critics, however, viewed it as evasiveness, suggesting a reluctance to engage directly on contentious issues. Ultimately, the debate showcased two divergent leadership strategies. One advocated for a more combative approach, emphasizing the need to fight harder. The other championed a cooler, more measured style, promising to govern cooler. Voters likely formed initial impressions based on these perceived temperaments before delving into the specifics of policy. The debate immediately plunged into controversy, with questions directed at Spanberger regarding her support for Democratic Attorney General nominee Jay Jones. This followed the resurfacing of violent text messages attributed to Jones. Earle-Sears pressed the issue forcefully, demanding a clear stance. Spanberger condemned the language as abhorrent, but maintained that voters ultimately decide the outcome. This exchange forced Spanberger onto the defensive from the debate's opening minutes, diverting attention from her intended message. It also allowed Earle-Sears to project moral clarity without directly engaging with broader national Republican rhetoric. While rescinding an endorsement so close to Election Day is largely symbolic due to locked ballots, the political impact was undeniable. Earle-Sears gained a theatrical advantage, though the governance signal was mixed. Swing voters often value consistency and proportionality, suggesting that condemnation without grandstanding might have resonated more broadly if consistently reiterated. Virginia's economy is deeply intertwined with federal operations, meaning federal worker furloughs and contractor disruptions have significant local impact. Both candidates attempted to assign blame for ongoing federal turmoil. Spanberger linked the pain to Trump-era policies and advocated for stability. Earle-Sears broadly criticized Democrats and challenged Spanberger to influence her own party. Both candidates largely adhered to their established political narratives. Voters heard familiar accusations and assurances rather than a clear bipartisan path forward. The underlying problem remains real, yet political incentives continue to reward partisan conflict. Earle-Sears maintained a high level of culture war energy when discussing transgender policy. Spanberger, conversely, deflected to local decision-making, emphasizing the roles of parents, educators, and communities. This approach aimed to de-escalate tensions and broaden appeal. Transgender policy has been a significant wedge issue since the Youngkin administration, retaining potency in local school board politics. Earle-Sears' push for a crisp statewide yes-no answer appeals to partisans, but risks alienating persuadable voters. Spanberger's emphasis on local control frustrates absolutists, but offers reassurance to the middle ground. Whether Spanberger's caution was perceived as careful consideration or hedging likely depended on individual voter priors. The debate highlighted the ongoing tension between statewide mandates and local autonomy on this sensitive issue. The debate's sharpest rhetorical exchanges occurred around abortion policy. Earle-Sears made claims that Democrats support abortion up to the minute of birth. Virginia law permits later-term procedures only under narrow, specific circumstances, and infanticide is unequivocally illegal. The current political battle centers on whether to enshrine protections or restrictions through constitutional amendments or statutes, and how a governor would utilize veto power. Earle-Sears framed Democrats as extreme and advocated for letting voters decide. Spanberger positioned herself as protecting current Virginia law and medical realities while fending off maximal bans. Voters heard more philosophical arguments than detailed policy proposals, and more emotional heat than specific facts. The discussion underscored the deep divisions surrounding reproductive rights in the Commonwealth. On immigration, Spanberger emphasized cooperation with federal authorities based on valid warrants and criminal charges. Earle-Sears advocated for a tougher baseline and linked immigration enforcement directly to public safety concerns. the fundamental disagreement was not over cooperation itself, but rather the specific conditions, speed, and thresholds for such cooperation. Both candidates affirmed the importance of parents in education. Earle-Sears framed parents as primary decision-makers and advocated for greater curriculum control. Spanberger supported parent engagement while defending the public school system as a vital public institution. The policy divergence centered on support for vouchers and education savings accounts versus reinvestment and reform within public schools. Virginia's rapid growth in data centers presents both economic opportunities and challenges, including rising energy costs and land use issues. Earle-Sears proposed an all-of-the-above energy supply, encompassing fossil fuels, nuclear power, and renewables. She welcomed the industry as a job creator and expressed skepticism about strict green mandates. Spanberger focused on demand-side efficiency, targeted grid upgrades, and ensuring high-load users pay their fair share to prevent household cost burdens. She expressed openness to advanced nuclear technology and supported RGGI-style funding and virtual power plants. The core governance test is not whether data centers arrive, but who bears the cost. Spanberger's plan explicitly considered on-site generation for data centers and regulatory proceedings to avoid socializing costs. Earle-Sears gambled that increased overall supply would benefit everyone. Voters must choose between these differing pricing philosophies, not just energy sources. Several claims made during the debate warrant closer examination. The infanticide claim mischaracterizes Virginia law, which tightly constrains later-term procedures. The political leverage of the J. Jones issue was significant, but ballot mechanics were largely fixed. Regarding transgender policy, the debate centers on state model policies versus local discretion, a key Republican wedge issue since 2021. Both sides simplified the complex federal shutdown impasse, though Virginia's exposure remains high regardless. Finally, reports across various outlets confirm the debate's dynamic of frequent interruptions and moderator interventions, with the Jones issue dominating the opening. Assessing a debate winner often depends on the criteria. On message discipline, Spanberger demonstrated greater consistency, adhering to themes of affordability, schools, and process. This steadiness aligns with her established brand. Earle-Sears excelled at momentum plays, maximizing the impact of the J. Jones story and dominating the room's energy. This fervor is central to her brand. For undecided voters, the outcome was likely a wash. Style often leaves a lasting impression, but policy differences can be technical, and pre-existing biases often prevail. Early reports consistently indicated no clear winner. Voters face clear choices across several key areas. On executive temperament, the decision is between fighting the other side harder, as proposed by Earle-Sears, or maintaining a lower temperature and refining the system, as advocated by Spanberger. Regarding energy bills and growth, the choice is between building more supply quickly and broadly, or making large users bear more of their own costs while prioritizing efficiency. For schools and culture, voters must decide between state-level clarity and parent primacy mandates, or local discretion and parent engagement within public school commitments. Finally, on abortion policy, the choice is between tighter guardrails and voter-referred limits, or protecting the current Virginia framework and medical discretion. Elections serve as mirrors before they become maps. This debate reflected two valid instincts of self-government: the drumbeat of conviction and the tuning fork of careful calibration. One promises power through collective action. The other promises order through meticulous planning. Virginia has experienced both approaches before and will again. Voters should choose not based on the most appealing applause line, but on the governing philosophy they are willing to live under once the cameras are off. It is imperative to vote. Democracy is a contact sport. Participation is essential. Early voting is open, and Election Day is Tuesday, November 4th, 2025. When the debate concluded, Virginia was left with what such events rarely deliver but voters always need: contrast without collapse. Winsome Earle-Sears spoke with the register of a street corner bullhorn, while Abigail Spanberger responded with the cadence of a policy brief. One promised to fight, the other to govern. Neither candidate shied away from their core identity. For those already aligned with a party, their convictions likely remained unchanged. For the undecided, the debate presented homework. On leadership style, the choice is clear. Earle-Sears embodies velocity, characterized by interruptions, direct address, and moral certainty. Spanberger represents ballast, maintaining a forward-facing posture, allowing moderators to finish and responding with detailed plans. To her supporters, Earle-Sears' style signifies courage. To critics, it appears chaotic. Spanberger's approach reads as steadiness to her base, but slipperiness to her skeptics. This is not a criticism, but an observation of their distinct temperaments. Elections are as much about temperament as they are about policy specifics. On public safety and immigration, a workable middle ground exists. Spanberger's position, cooperation based on honest warrants and valid documentation, establishes a boundary. Earle-Sears' focus on criminals represents a stricter enforcement approach. Both fences and locks can coexist. The true test lies beyond slogans, in whether either campaign will publish a detailed cooperation protocol with timelines and oversight. Voters deserve concrete plans, not just rhetoric. Regarding schools, the parent rights versus public schools dichotomy is a false one. Earle-Sears advocates for parents designing curriculum, while Spanberger emphasizes public funds supporting public schools with strong parent engagement. The next step requires blueprints, transparent curriculum portals, clear opt-in, opt-out policies, annual teacher-parent compacts, and funding models that protect neighborhood schools. Investing in children means investing in their learning environments. On transgender policy, the debate's temperature often overshadowed the facts. Spanberger's default to local decision-making involving parents, educators, and communities aims to de-escalate. Earle-Sears pushed for statewide clarity, which comforts one side and alarms the other. A responsible compromise involves privacy-preserving facilities, activity-specific safety standards, medical guidance over political memes, and efficient grievance processes. Courage lies in specificity, not just in shouting. For reproductive policy, clarity is paramount. Earle-Sears alluded to letting Virginians decide without specifying an exact endpoint. Spanberger defended current Virginia law and medical discretion, including protections for life-threatening pregnancies. Voters require a line-by-line posture, gestational limits, medical exceptions, parental involvement rules for minors, and how a governor would approach future amendments. Trust is built on transparent details. Both candidates largely avoided the complex math of the car tax. While everyone dislikes the bill, cutting a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream necessitates identifying which services will shrink, which fees will rise, or what substitute tax will replace it. Work together later is not a fiscal plan. It is a deferral. Virginians deserve a clear, costed proposal. The issue of data centers and power bills represents a policy fork that directly impacts household finances. Earle-Sears favors an all-of-the-above supply, including coal, betting that more megawatts will lead to cheaper rates. Spanberger advocates for demand-side discipline and ensuring high-load users bear their own costs, preventing households from becoming the grid's default payer. This is the clearest policy difference of the night. Voters must choose between prioritizing bulk supply or a cost-causer-pays philosophy. Both approaches require published math and guardrails for water use, noise, and siting. On marijuana, transparency, and fentanyl, clarity trumps posturing. Spanberger seeks a clean, regulated market to displace the gray market where fentanyl often hides. Earle-Sears supported medicinal use, but offered less emphasis on transparency. Voters need specific details: how retail is licensed, how products are tested and tracked, and how law enforcement gains real-time access to data to prevent deadly adulteration. The ability to trace products from warehouse to dispensary is crucial for public safety. Regarding political violence and the J. Jones spectacle, consistency is the only credible standard. Spanberger condemned the language and deferred to voters. Earle-Sears pressed for total disavowal. If the rule is not applied symmetrically, it becomes marketing, not morality. Virginia is weary. Condemning threats without asterisks, while still engaging in policy debate, is essential for mature governance. What truly separates these candidates are four governing forks. First, temperament, confrontation versus composure. Second, energy bills, building everything versus billing the biggest users and conserving. Third, schools, state-mandated clarity versus local discretion anchored in public schools. Fourth, reproductive policy, tighter guardrails via ballot versus protecting current law with explicit medical exceptions. To earn the middle ground, each campaign has immediate tasks. Earle-Sears should publish a detailed table outlining her vision for parent-designed curriculum, state-set standards, and intervention metrics. She also needs a costed energy plan that avoids treating clean coal as a panacea, and a direct answer on abortion limits. Spanberger should release a car tax replacement one-pager with named offsets. Provide a firmer framework for transgender facilities that protects privacy and safety, and detail the regulatory checkpoints to prevent data center costs from burdening households. Citizens should analyze this debate with a ruler, not a mood ring. Measure promises by their specificity, timelines, and trade-offs. If a candidate offers passion without a clear financial plan, voters should politely note it for later consideration. If a candidate offers process without clear priorities, voters should ask what they will do first, even if it carries political cost. Self-government is the art of choosing which challenges to accept for the common good. Finally, the most fundamental act, vote. Encourage friends and neighbors to find their polling places. Early voting exists to ensure that life's complexities do not silence one's voice. Virginia is a diverse commonwealth, and last night presented two distinct paths for its future. Choose the path you trust. Virginia does not require a savior on the stage. It requires citizens with stamina. Hold both campaigns accountable. Demand truth, transparent math, protection for the vulnerable, responsible spending, and a commitment to leaving the Commonwealth better than they found it. This is not partisan. It is the enduring expectation of good governance.
When the lights cooled and the applause thinned, Virginia was left with what debates rarely deliver but voters always need: contrast without collapse. Winsome Earle-Sears argued in the register of a street corner bullhorn. Abigail Spanberger answered in the cadence of a policy brief. One promised to fight, the other promised to govern. Neither flinched from who they are. If you came wearing red or blue, you left the same shade. If you came undecided, you left with homework. On leadership style, the choice is plain. Earle-Sears' velocity, interruptions, direct address, moral certainty. Spanberger is ballast, face forward, let the moderator finish, answer with a plan, sometimes too slowly for the moment. One reads as courage to her fans, chaos to her critics. The other reads as steadiness to her base, slipperiness to her skeptics. That's not a knock, it's an X-ray. Elections are about temperament as much as text. On public safety and immigration, i.e., local police, a workable center exists. Spanberger's line, honest warrant, valid documentation, cooperate, is a fence. Earle-Sears' line, focus on criminals, is a lock. Fences and locks can coexist. The real test isn't the slogan, it's whether either campaign will publish a step-by-step cooperation protocol with timelines, oversight, and reporting. Voters deserve a sheet of paper, not a chant. On schools, parent rights versus public schools is a false binary. Earle-Sears says parents design curriculum. Spanberger says public dollars belong in public schools with strong parent engagement. Good. Now show the blueprint: transparent curriculum portals, opt-in, opt-out clarity, annual teacher-parent compacts, and a funding model that doesn't quietly hollow out the neighborhood school. If you love kids, you fund the room where they actually sit. On transgender policy, the temperature outran the facts. Spanberger defaulted to local decision-making, parents, educators, communities, an answer that cools the room but frustrates absolutists. Earle-Sears pushed statewide clarity, which comforts one side and alarms the other. The responsible compromise is boring and adult, privacy-preserving facilities, activity-by-activity safety standards, medical guidance above memes, and a grievance process that works in weeks, not headlines. Courage isn't shouting, it's specifying. On reproductive policy, say the quiet parts plainly. Earle-Sears gestures to let Virginians decide, while avoiding the exact endpoint. Spanberger defends current Virginia law and medical discretion, including clear protections for life-threatening pregnancies. Yes, ectopic means urgent intervention. That's medicine, not politics. Voters don't need epithets. They need a line-by-line posture, gestational limits, medical exceptions, parental involvement rules for minors, and how a governor will treat a future amendment. If you want trust, print the footnotes. On the car tax, both sides punted the math. Everyone hates the bill in the glove compartment. Fine. But you cannot cut a multi-billion-dollar revenue stream without stating which services shrink, which fees rise, or which substitute tax replaces it. Work together later is not a fiscal plan, it's a lullaby. Virginians deserve a pay-for memo that fits on one page and survives a calculator. On data centers and your power bill, this is the policy fork that actually hits your kitchen table. Earle-Sears favors all of the above, supply, coal claims included, betting that more megawatts mean cheaper rates. Spanberger favors demand-side discipline and make high-load users carry their freight so households aren't the grid's piggy bank. That's the clearest, cleanest difference of the night. Pick your philosophy, bulk supply first or cost causa pays first. Either way, publish the math and set guardrails for water use, noise, siting, and local profits so Loudon's fight doesn't become everyone's regret. On marijuana transparency and fentanyl, clarity beats posture. Spanberger wants a clean, regulated market that crowds out the gray zone where fentanyl hides. Earle-Sears backed medicinal use but waved off the transparency angle mid-exchange. Voters need 2 sentences from each: how retail is licensed, how product is tested and tracked, and how law enforcement gets real-time access to the data that stops deadly adulteration. If you can trace a package from warehouse to dispensary to waste bin, you can close the door fentanyl keeps slipping through. On political violence and the J. Jones spectacle, consistency is the only credible standard. Spanberger condemned the language and deferred to voters. Earle-Sears pressed for total disavowal. Fine, apply that same heat to your allies tomorrow. If the rule isn't symmetric, it isn't moral, it's marketing. Virginia is exhausted. We can condemn threats without asterisks and still argue policy like grown-ups. What actually separates them? For governing forks. 1. Temperament, confrontation versus composure. 2. Energy bills, build everything versus bill the biggest users and conserve. 3. Schools, state-mandated clarity versus local discretion anchored in public schools. 4. Reproductive policy, tighter guardrails via ballot versus protect current law with explicit medical exceptions. What should each campaign do, immediately, if they want to earn the middle? Earle-Sears, publish a 3-column table: what I mean by parent-designed curriculum, what stays state-set, what metrics trigger state intervention. Add a costed energy plan that doesn't treat clean coal as a magic wand, and answer the abortion limit question directly. Spanberger, release a car tax replacement 1-pager with named offsets. Give a firmer transgender facilities framework that protects privacy and safety without hand-waving. Show the SCC checkpoints that keep data center costs off household bills. How should citizens read this night? With a ruler, not a mood ring. Measure promises by specificity, timelines, and trade-offs. If a candidate offers passion without a pay-for, smile politely and circle later on your ballot notes. If a candidate offers process without priority, ask, what will you do first, even if it costs you politically? Self-government is the art of choosing which brews you'll accept for the common good. And now the part that's not fancy but is forever. Vote. Bring 2 friends. Help your neighbor find their polling place. Early voting exists so life's chaos doesn't veto your voice. The Commonwealth is a long river fed by many creeks, blue-collar and bookish, chapel and courthouse, shipyard, and server farm. Last night gave you 2 ways to steer it. Choose the or you trust. In the end, Virginia doesn't need a savior on a stage, it needs citizens with stamina. Hold both campaigns to the same fire, tell the truth, show the math, guard the vulnerable, spend what you can defend, and leave the place better than you found it. That's not partisan. That's just how our grandparents did it, quietly, stubbornly, together. Takeaway, both showed moments of neighbor honor, each praised the other personally. Spanberger leaned toward restraint and local process. Earle-Sears leaned toward conviction and confrontation. Did either take a stand on abortion? Earle-Sears, your notes say she deferred to voters and didn't name limits when asked. That reads as principled process without a stated endpoint. Spanberger, your notes say she supports current Virginia law, cites medical exceptions. That reads as status quo protection rather than new restrictions. Plain read, both avoided the far edges. Spanberger specified the framework, Earle-Sears specified the mechanism, voters, but not the line. Christian read for voters, log and spec edition. 1. Pray first, Matt 6. Ask for clean motives, soft tone, and sharp discernment. 2. Check the fruits, Matt 7:16. Watch how each speaks under pressure. Does love remain? 3. Demand a one-pager. Truth loves light. Ask each side for clear, written limits, abortion, protocols, ICE, and math, car tax, energy bills. 4. Choose courage and kindness. The kingdom isn't advanced by winning an argument but by doing the words, Matt 7:24. A quiet benediction for both. Lord Jesus, teach our leaders to be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Give them courage without cruelty, prudence without cowardice. Make us peacemakers who tell the truth in love, and neighbors who vote with clean hands and pure hearts. Amen. Bottom line, without spin. If you prize moral boldness and parent-centric control, even if it stings, Earle-Sears matched that energy, but owes voters clearer abortion specifics and steadier restraint. If you prize calm process and cost-sharing fairness, even if it feels slow, Spanberger matched that posture, but owes voters firmer lines where prudence becomes passivity. Neither fits neatly in a halo. Both showed glimmers of grace. Measure them by the mount, and pick the one whose virtues outweigh their vices under the light of Christ.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we ain't talking left or right tonight. We talking like the kind that cuts through pride. Two leaders stepping up, same stage, same fight. But the real test, who walks the word right? Two voices, one mic, spotlight on the floor. One holds a tongue, one swings like war. Abigail waiting to turn calm in the storm. Winsome fires words like the pulpit's warm. One quotes the process, one quotes the creed. Both quote the founders, both plant seeds. But which soil's deep and which seed grows? Only time and fruit gonna show who knows.
Blessed are the meek, the ones who think before they speak. Blessed are the pure in heart, there's power now. Love your enemies even when they tweet and freak. Cause the loudest drum don't mean the spirit's unique.
Two sides, one mouth.
Tell me who gon' listen.
Two hearts, one fight.
Tell me who's missing.
One says let voters decide, let the people choose. But dodge the limit line, that's political news. One says keep the law, we got protect the life at stake. Talk, sex, topic, danger, real lives on the take. Neither one scream murder, neither one preach hate. Both walk that razor edge the culture makes. But Christ said let your yes be yes. No spin, no jest, so the faithful keep watch. Cause clarity's the test.
Blessed are the pure in heart, there's power now. Love your enemies even when they tweet and freak. Cause the loudest drum don't mean the spirit's unique.
Two sides, one mouth.
Tell me
the plan.
Cause a soft word breaks bones harder than a man.
Anger's a spark, keep it far from the flame.
Cause every idle word got heaven calling your name.
Yeah, one sounds Pharisee law in her tone, guarding the gate like truth's on loan. The other Sadducee system and state, practical peace but the edges ache. Yeah, one burns hot with conviction sword, the other cool like a diplomat's board. But the kingdom needs both, the fire and frame. One to guard holiness, one to keep sane. Yet both must bow when pride gets loud. Cause humility's the crown, not the crowd. See, Jesus didn't call for perfect debates. He called for perfect love. He said, pray for them that persecute you. He said, turn the other cheek. He didn't say win the argument. He said, win the soul. So maybe tonight ain't about parties, it's about posture. One mouth, let the people see. Mercy walks taller than any decree. Truth and grace ain't blood